today's studio guest is Lorna Martyn, Ireland Site Lead and Senior Vice President for Technology Management at Fidelity Investments. Welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me, Anne. Delighted to be here.
Good. So, Fidelity Investments, a lot of growth in recent years. Tell us a little bit about the organisation in general, and then maybe about operations here in Ireland, and I suppose specifically over in Galway too.
Sure, Anne. So, Fidelity is a global financial services company. Not everyone may have heard of us, but we have about 77,000 people globally. So in terms of, I suppose, what differentiates us, we're actually privately held. We have been privately held for the 79 years since founding. So that gives us a very unique opportunity to really think about the long-term benefits for our customers. I suppose the other thing that is very interesting about us is, it's a very, very diverse company in terms of the services that we provide, but equally in terms of the customers we have. So everything from the personal investor to families to institutional investors. So we service kind of the whole gambit. So our focus is really on, providing services that I suppose provide lifelong benefits to our customers. We've been in Ireland since 1996, so we're going to celebrate our 30th anniversary in Ireland next year. And we came to Ireland. Fidelity Ireland was the very first footprint outside of the United States for Fidelity, which was probably a great honour and opportunity, but really they came here in search of really good technical talent. So the very early years of Fidelity in Ireland was focused very much on a technology footprint. Now we have over 2,000 people here in Ireland across our Dublin and Galway campuses, over 50 different nationalities across our workforce here. So, it's been a period of growth over that 30 years. So maybe the last 10 years have been really, really strong periods of growth. Particularly in terms of 10 years ago, we really ramped up our focus on business operations in Ireland. So here in Ireland now we have a technology presence, a business operations presence, and also a shared services presence. But still about 80% technology. And, I think from an IDA perspective, they love us a little bit because we have that regionally balanced footprint. So we're not quite 50-50, but we're working towards that in terms of being 50-50 aligned to our Dublin and Galway operations.
Amazing. And I remember meeting you and your colleagues many years ago and thinking that Fidelity seems to have aspirations to be as much a technology company as a financial company. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think a very, very long history of innovation. And, that's been driven by, leadership from day one. And I would say particularly our current CEO, Abby Johnson, and her father. So very much a focus on bringing kind of thoughtful innovation to the business, and in many different ways. So I would always describe Fidelity sort of as a technology company embedded in a financial services company, and from an innovation perspective, we kind of look at it in a couple of different ways. So clearly there's the innovation in terms of what we do in our day-to-day. So we service the US business here from Ireland, so everything from asset managers to our digital assets business. So we're constantly looking in the day-to-day in terms of how we can bring new thoughts, innovations, technology into solving those current problems. And then within Fidelity we would also have what we call our Fidelity Centre for Applied Technology. And that is a group that's really focused on researching the future, really bringing, I suppose, outside in thinking, driving some very provocative conversations internally in terms of what the future of our business might look like. And we would have a really good presence here, really scanning, I suppose, the European ecosystem. And then the third element would be Fidelity Labs, which is really, I suppose, what we call is our venture lab. And that's really helping, build and scale new companies, so brand new businesses that Fidelity spawns. So we would have, activity across all three elements of innovation, everything from what I would call small I in the business right through to really looking to the future.
Very good. And coming back to yourself, if I may, tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are now with Fidelity Investments, please. How did it all start?
Well, I suppose I'll go right back to kind of the start of my career and interest in technology, which is a very interesting story. So I took a coding class at age 12. And how that came about is I was born in Galway. I come from a family of six, so 6 siblings, or 6 of us in total, 5 brothers and myself. I have 3 older brothers. They all had kind of summer jobs. I was bored at home, and my mother, if you said you were bored, you either got a job or you got something to learn. So she plucked this course out of the local newspaper, the Galway Advertiser, and she dispatched me off. Probably had no idea what she was sending me into, other than maybe the price was right and the timing was right. So I joined a class, and I was the only girl in the class, and it was actually learning how to write BASIC. So this is going back a long time ago. And I found I just loved it. I was good at it. And, it didn't intimidate me to be in the room full of boys, because I was surrounded by boys at home, so I didn't think any differently of that. It's probably only very much later in my career I kind of thought how interesting that was as a data point. So that led me to going to the University of Limerick, where I did an undergraduate in computer systems. And at the time, UL and DCU were the only universities that offered internships, or co-ops as we used to call them at the time. So that was a great opportunity to get out and learn how to build enterprise scale technology in the real world. So I was very fortunate to have a co-op at Bank of Ireland in their information technology department at the time, and great exposure to phenomenal people, but also phenomenal opportunities. They really, it wasn't a side project built for the intern. It was very much helping build the systems that were part of their production scale. And I actually joined them as a graduate for a number of years. But I suppose my learning from there was, technology is really interesting, but solving really interesting problems is actually where the great joy and sustained joy is. So while I was at Bank of Ireland, I did my postgrad in Smurfit School, really just to round out maybe some of my business knowledge. And then I kind of got to a point where there was a little itch in terms of, well, maybe there's a world outside of financial services. So I spent about 5 years in the telco space, and that was a great opportunity. It really, I suppose, gave me the opportunity to work and build and scale global teams, but also work in the consultancy space and work in a totally different domain space. And then almost 21 years ago, I joined Fidelity, thinking that maybe that was my next step for a couple of years. I mean, I loved my time in financial services. I had a couple of friends who worked at Fidelity. I'd heard a lot about the company, so I was very excited at the opportunity. And 9 positions and nearly 21 years later, I find myself here. But, what I would say is within, the organization is very large. There's a lot of different businesses. So in that time, I've had the opportunity in technology roles to traverse a lot of the businesses. And that probably set me up well for, some of my recent roles. So, in the last 10 years, I spent, a number of years, nearly 7 years as head of technology for Ireland. So focusing very much on scaling the Ireland business. And that's where we've been through a lot of our growth from a technology and from a business perspective. And then in the last 3 years, a combined role as what was called regional chair, it's now called site lead, combined with the global role in technology as part of our workplace investing business. So it's been a really nice opportunity to work, across Fidelity, not just in Ireland. I spent a good bit of time in the US as well, but working with global teams. And really, every day is a learning day. So it's been a phenomenal place to work, and hope many more opportunities to come.
Isn't that wonderful? And speaking of which, you've had various leadership roles in the technology space in particular, but tell us about your own views about, what have you learned, and what does a good leader look like for you?
Yeah, I suppose some of the best leaders that I've worked with, Anne, probably combine that ability to articulate a really good vision, but with the self-awareness to really listen and learn. So I think they're the 2 things that are primarily most important. Depending on the role, the level of functional expertise varies, right? So if you're a deep tech leader, you might be very deep in a particular area. And then I suppose there's a couple of other attributes that, that I think are really important. So I think first of all, I suppose really strong communication skills, so the ability to articulate that vision, but also the ability to be able to operate at different altitudes is maybe how I would describe it. So to be able to articulate, the 10,000 foot vision, the business outcomes and opportunities to the business partners, but equally the ability to be able to talk to the most junior engineer and connect what they're doing on the day-to-day to the big picture outcome. So that's really important. The second thing I would say is, resilience, so the ability to, every organization goes through change. So I think having that ability to be resilient, but also to be agile in terms of how you think about things, how you bring on new ideas is another critical attribute. The third area I would say is really about, I suppose, a thirst for learning, a curiosity. Lifelong learning is really, really important. As I say, I learn something new every day, and I think that's something that's really critical to kind of keep you fueled as a leader over a long career. And I'd say the final thing I would say is just being human, right? Mm-hmm. I think that, we deal with lots of different situations with lots of different, people from different backgrounds and perspectives. I'm a firm believer there's at least 3 sides to every story. And, ultimately, I think if you're absolutely very human and fair and consistent, that regardless of how tough the message is, everyone is the better for it. And ultimately, I suppose, it's what separates us from the machines.
Yeah, very appropriate in the current climate. Speaking of machines and AI and you name it, tell us a little bit about the trends that are affecting, your sector and an organisation like Fidelity.
Yeah, again, you always get the hype cycles, right? And we all read that, and so I think Fidelity looks at it probably quite differently. So, first and foremost, we're looking at the future of financial services. So really, what's happening in the fintech space, and our FCAT organisation spends a lot of time out, working in the startup space, understanding, what ideas and opportunities are coming down the line, and that's really important as you think about the next generation of customers. What digital experiences they expect. Even thinking about, so maybe we've been looking at blockchain and tokenization for years in terms of, what does that mean in terms of how you build, new infrastructure within financial services. The second area, because we serve the US audience, we're constantly looking at kind of future America. Yeah. And that's really about what do households look like in future America? What does the working life look like? Ultimately, how do people earn and how do people save? And if you think about, go back to last generation, it was very much focused on people got a permanent pensionable job. They contributed to a 401k pension scheme. They probably opened a 529 for their children's education, and that was it. Now you have people who are in the gig economy. Mm-hmm. They're earning in different patterns. They're probably saving and investing in different patterns. So really thinking about what does that future customer look like? So looking 10, 20, and our CEO Abby's always been very focused on things like the young investor. They may not have a lot of money today, but what are the right products to engage them to be our investors of the future and, to have that future wealth. The third area then really is supposed looking at, I suppose business foundations, I suppose is the best way to describe it. And that's really looking at, that's where kind of AI comes into the space. So looking at things like AI and even things like gaming infrastructure, and how does that change how we build and develop products, now and into the future. And then the fourth area is really the deep tech space. So that's the stuff that's, 10 or 15 years out. And, one great example of that is looking at like quantum computing, right? So that's an area we're very interested in at the moment. We don't necessarily know how it's going to apply, but I think, there's a large number of, there's a lot of research going on. And if you think about the formation recently of Quantum Ireland as a perfect example of a group that's interested in that space and exploring. And lots of other areas like, how, everyone is talking about AI, but AI has been around a long time. So if I think about within our business, AI, we would be using we use machine learning in a lot of our internal processes and so forth. But ultimately, everyone is talking about generative AI, yes. Large language models, and even agentic AI at the moment, and they're areas that are emerging, and they're obviously interesting because we're dealing with a lot of, I suppose data is the biggest resource we have globally, both our personal data and organizational data. And, so providing the opportunity to be able to maybe manage and search that kind of data more effectively for customers and for the organizations themselves is important. But I suppose the one thing I would say from a Fidelity perspective, we always focus on our customers and the security of the firm. So any AI that we will integrate into our product servicing is really AI that we really have to understand. Yeah. So some of the more nascent, more nascent methodologies coming along the way wouldn't necessarily be part of a stack in the here and now, maybe into the future. And you have to remember, financial services is a highly regulated business as well. So finding that balance in terms of thinking about what is, really the future foundations and the future deep tech, with balancing that, commitment to your customer and commitment to the security and resilience of the business. You don't survive nearly 80 years without, having that customer first and foremost.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that idea of looking at the customer and building the technology for the future of the customer, as opposed to building technology that's looking for a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
You see that a bit, don't you?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times in my career, and particularly as technologists, our bias is we love new tech, and we'll go out and try and find a problem to apply the tech to, as opposed to the other way around. And at Fidelity, we always operate the other way around, because ultimately technology is here to service the business. That's ultimately what it's about.
And people lose sight of that sometimes.
People lose sight, but I think organisationally we do a really good job because of how we're structured to really think about the entire gambit, but also the timeline. So it's not just what you're going to deliver next week. It's going to be what's the landscape going to look like in 20 or 30 years' time, and that's how you build a resilient business that that exists over multiple generations.
Yeah, and boy, it has. Tell me then, IDA or our partners on the series, tell us a little bit about the relationship with IDA and what that's been like over the years, and the sort of maybe innovation that you've done with them.
Yeah, so IDA have been with us since the very beginning. So if I go back to, I haven't been with the company since the very beginning, but certainly when I joined, we were in our early scaling phase, and so a lot of the supports there would have been capability supports to help grow the organisation, but most importantly to help grow the domain expertise in the organisation. So, think about, a very, very deep financial services company coming to somewhere like Ireland, that, the models of how financial services operate in the US are very different to Ireland. We wouldn't have had any of that expertise. So IDA certainly helped us in terms of building some of that expertise. And then I suppose as we started to grow and scale, we got very much more interested in looking at, again, where we brought business opportunities and we were looking for really good innovative solutions. So, a lot of focus on academic collaboration. So I think that's something that from an Ireland ecosystem perspective, we've seen such, it's something that's actually very unique about Ireland. And, one of our former CTOs used to call us the Goldilocks site, not too big, not too small, just right. And that really kind of spoke to the ecosystem. And I think IDA do a really good job in terms of connecting all of the players there. And then I suppose in more recent years, where, we obviously have enough research and development going on where we actually avail of things like tax credits and so forth. We still work very closely with IDA in terms of, new business that we're coming on, growth in the business. So helping us support, as we've scaled over the last couple of years. But equally, I think about like Dr. Nicola Stokes on their technologists working with our technology team. It really provides an opportunity where Nicola is working across a lot of different companies to introduce like-minded companies to really, I suppose, advance in certain spaces. And then, we get a lot of support from Maeve McConnell and the financial services team. I think about in the last couple of years, one of the businesses that we've been building that has a big footprint here in Ireland is in our digital asset space. So, that the idea in that regard have been absolutely phenomenal in terms of helping us navigate the Irish system here. So I think really just in everything we've done, they've kind of been with us, and I think what's wonderful about IDA is they're always there, you know, they're kind of with you like a little angel on your shoulder sort of thing, but not kind of, you know, sometimes they'll ask you the questions that you need to ask, but most of the time it's really, you know, very much a support that's there to rely and bounce off, you know, and even things like, you know, we actually hired a lot of people through COVID. You know, which was interesting, you know, so when everyone else was kind of battening down the hatches, and this is kind of part of being a privately held company, we thought this is a great opportunity to really, you know, focus on getting some fantastic talent, and IDA really helped us in terms of just some of the publicity around that. So they're kind of simple examples helping us with, you know, scaling, and also helping us with that connection from a technology perspective. And then, you know, in the early stages, very much more kind of helping us on the capability funding side.
And the future, optimistic?
Yeah, I'm always optimistic. I think I'm genuinely an optimistic person. You know, I think, you know, there's many things to be optimistic about. I think in terms of where we're at from an Ireland organisation, we've evolved massively in the last 10 years. I'm very excited for, you know, what's to come. I'm particularly excited, you know, when I speak to my colleagues who are, you know, working as part of FCAT and as part of Fidelity Labs. You know, we see, you know, a lot of new business models scale out of that, and some of them have really strong connections to Ireland. I mean, I'll give an example of something in the last few years that, you know, I'd love to see other opportunities replicated that have a firm footprint here. So if you look at, you know, if you look at personal debt in the United States, student debt is the second biggest to mortgage debt, and one of the products that we launched for Fidelity that had a big influence from the Irish team was a student debt relief benefit that our workplace team provide to their customers to help their employees write down their debt. So I think, you know, I'm very excited for new models, but I suppose two areas that I'm really excited is really what's the future of quantum. You know, and what does that mean? It is, I mean, because if we think about, you know, the problems and the challenges we have, the data we have, the ability to really look at those complex problems requires a lot more compute power, and that's, you know, one area that potentially helps us. And then I think the second part is, you know, we're all very concerned about, I think we're now more aware of our data as a personal asset, as a company asset, as, you know, as an asset for society. So I'm really excited to see, you know, what happens there from a cryptographic perspective in terms of how does that maybe enhance our security offerings down the line. So they're two areas. And then I suppose finally for us, we continue to grow. So we're still actively growing, particularly in our Galway office in the technology space. So that will be a continued focus for us over the next year or so.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks a million for coming in, and it was wonderful to chat.
Thanks, Anne. An absolute pleasure to chat with you.